Hello, folks. I just have to make sure that the sound isn't on my video that I'm watching, because I'm watching this as I'm speaking. So just going to take a moment here. It's not showing me. Hello, folks. Oh, there it is. I just have to make sure that the sound isn't on my video that I'm watching, because I'm watching this as I'm speaking. So just trying something different, and things never kind of work right when we do that, right? So, all right, I'm gonna do it this way. Nope, just trying something different. All right, that's not working. So I'm turning that off, and it's just going to be the video. I'll bring Facebook up on my phone instead, so that I can still follow along with everything that folks are saying and everything this morning. And yay, it did notify us. It did notify us that the notification went out. So yay, wonderful. Good to see that. Good to see that. Anyway, what is this? This is PB Reads the Bible, another episode of PB Reads the Bible. And it's episode 19 on our journey through the book of 2 Samuel. We're drawing close to the end of our journey through Samuel, the full text, the first and second books of Samuel. And I'm coming to you live from the home office today. Just kind of running in slow motion, maybe a little bit here. And I was feeling a little rushed, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to slow down, doing it from home today, before I head on into the office. Not that I started my day late. I got up at 5 o'clock and went for a run / walk, more walk than run, if I'm being honest on that one. But anyway, you don't need to hear all that or know all of that. This is PB Reads the Bible. I'm PB, Pastor Brian, pastor here at Christ United Methodist Church, and it is great to be together today. Now, and today is Wednesday, August 17th. For me, because I'm doing this live, and for some of you, that's the date and the time. For others, you're watching it some other time, which is amazing that you're connecting and joining in that fashion, that you find time to do it. Whenever it is that you're joining us, whether it's live or some other time, go ahead and check in. Tell us you're there. Say good morning, hello, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the case might be. And also put your comments in there and anything you want all of us to keep in our prayers, because we're sharing life together and keeping each other surrounded in prayer. And I see we've got several already chiming in and joining and checking in. Wonderful. Good morning, Marcia. Good morning, Cheryl. Good morning, Cindy. Good to have you, all of you folks. And I presume that's also John. Good morning to you. Good morning, Colleen. Oh, there it is, John and Cindy with you. Yeah, I thought that might be the case. Well, thank you. Yep, I have another appointment in a couple of weeks. We'll keep that. Good morning, Maureen. Good to see you here as well. Great to have folks together in this way as we journey. Like I said, this is episode 19 on our journey through the book of 2 Samuel, and we're going to be looking at chapter 21. So, friends, there are 24 chapters in the book of 2 Samuel. So that means we're almost done. After today, we will have 3 chapters left to do. Presuming we do 1 chapter a day, which that's what my plans are. I don't plan on doing 2 at any time. We will have chapter 22 tomorrow, and then we will do chapters 23 and 24 on Monday and Tuesday of next week. So yes, it's going to go into next week by 2 days, 20 for chapters 23 and 24. I have not yet selected what our next book of the Bible will be. But I think we're going to take at least 3 days off anyway. Okay. So we're probably going to take, since it's Monday and Tuesday next week, probably just going to take Wednesday and Thursday would only be our days anyway. So it's really 2 days. I think we'll take the rest of that week off. and start in the following week. Maybe we'll take 2 weeks off. I don't know. I have to decide what book we're doing and then take a look at the calendar and see when we should start. So just keep on the lookout. Check out our Facebook page every once in a while, and because I'll put an announcement there. Join us for worship. The announcement will definitely be going in the bulletin and in my verbal announcements as well, and when we're starting and what book of the Bible we'll be looking at next. Okay. Okay. Oh, good morning, Carol. Good to see you joining us this morning as well. So I think that's it for those kind of announcements. We do today's Wednesday, so we got one more day this week. Worship, of course, on Sunday, 8:15 and 10:45 in person. 10:45 will also be live streamed. We'd love to have you join us in person. We'd love to have you join us in person and gain connection that way. But of course, if you can't, we would still love to have you join us in worship through Facebook and YouTube and the website. So please join us one way or another. It'll be on the 21st. This will be the last Sunday of our series on the Exodus and the wilderness. We'll be wrapping that series up this week. I can hear you say "yay" or "finally," might be the case as well. And with the theme of don't forget, always remember, something like that. I don't remember which one I actually settled on, and with the sermon title of "Pass It On." And we'll also be blessing backpacks. So if you know somebody who's going back to school, either as a student, a teacher, an administrator, some sort of staff person, have them join us to have their backpack, book bag, briefcase, attaché, messenger bag, man purse, whatever, blessed as they begin the new school year. I just have to check once in a while. Yeah. Doing it this way, I need to just look once in a while on my phone. There we go. Okay, so chapter 21 of 2 Samuel, not a super long one, and it's unusual. There are arguments that this is actually misplaced, that it got relocated at some place, that it shouldn't be here, that it should actually be located earlier in Samuel, back to the beginning, to near the beginning of 2 Samuel, and I'll explain why when we get to that point. There's a lot of ambiguity as far as what's going on, what's taking place, the why, we might say the why of some of these stories. And we'll try to talk about those as we go along too. So we can't talk about them until we get to them. We can't get to them unless I shut up and start reading. So here we go. Now there was a famine in the days of David for 3 years, year after year. And David inquired of Yahweh. Yahweh said, "There is blood guilt on Saul and on his house, because he put the Gibeonites to death." So the king called the Gibeonites and spoke to them. Now, the Gibeonites were not of the people of Israel, but of the remnant of the Amorites. Although the people of Israel had sworn to spare them, Saul had tried to wipe them out in his zeal for the people of Israel and Judah. Pause. So the Gibeonites aren't one of the tribes of Israel. They were people living in the land of Canaan, living in Canaan. Now here they're described as Amorites, which is fine, but they lived in Canaan before the Israelites got there. And we read about them in the book of Joshua, how Joshua came to an agreement with them. They were kind enough to the Israelites, and Joshua said, "No, we're not going to kill you. And you can stay here." I think he made them be, you'd almost say, like second-class citizens and servants of them. But Saul, which of course this is many years later, Saul decides he wants to get rid of them. Apparently, that's what this story tells us. This story does not appear anywhere else. In the earlier part of Samuel, in the book of First Samuel, doesn't say any of this. It does not have a story about Saul killing Gibeon, or trying to kill the Gibeonites. When you look at the book of Chronicles, Hebrew book of Chronicles, are Christian Bible, First and Second Chronicles, which reiterates most of the stuff found in the books of Samuel and the books of Kings, also does not have anything in there about Saul wanting to kill the Gibeonites. So this is the first point of ambiguity and confusion. Why is this story being told? And why is it not told elsewhere if it's something that actually happened? So there's no record in the Bible, and there's no record that I'm aware of that has been located yet anyway, in any other extra biblical document. So it's only here. David, so picking up from there, verse 3, David said to the Gibeonites, "What shall I do for you? How shall I make expiation that you may bless the heritage of Yahweh?" The Gibeonites said to him, "Oh, it is not a matter of silver or gold between us and Saul or his house. Neither is it for us to put anyone to death in Israel." Pause. So the Gibeonites, they respond to David's call, and we shouldn't read all the Gibeonites, of course, just their leadership or selected few that go report to David. And David says, "What shall we do? How can we make this right? How can we make this right? So that you would ask God for blessings upon us rather than being cursed with this famine." Now, notice what they say, and here's what they're really saying. Okay, they're saying money's not going to cover it. Money's not going to cover it. It's not a money. You can't buy your way out of this. But they also say it's not up to us to kill anybody. We wouldn't be allowed to kill someone. So without saying it, they're saying somebody needs to die. Somebody needs to die to equal things out. Saul's line is basically what they're going to be asking for. Needs to be cut off. His sons need to be killed, but that's against the law. So we can't do what needs to be done. All right. David gets what they're saying even without them actually saying it. So picking up from there, David said, "What do you say that I should do for you?" Period. In other words, quit beating around the bush. Just tell me what it's going to take, and I will make it okay. They said to the king, "The man who consumed us and planned to destroy us so that we should have no place in all the territory of Israel, let 7 of his sons be handed over to us, and we will impale them before Yahweh at Gibeon on the mountain of Yahweh." The king said, "I will hand them over." Pause. So we get to the first point. This is a big reason why a lot of scholars think that this chapter doesn't belong here, that it's been relocated. We don't have good proof, definitive proof on that. But we're told earlier that all of Saul's sons were dead, with like the one exception of Ishboeth, who Abner had absconded with, so to speak, and set up as king. But he's the only one that was mentioned earlier. And Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth, when David said, "Is there anyone left that I can," you remember that, right? David said, "Is there anyone left that I could honor?" And so we've got those, but those are the only ones that are mentioned. And yet here they're saying that there are some sons that are living. So either the one story was wrong, which is quite possible, that they said, "Oh yeah, they're all gone. Oh, wait a minute, we were wrong. There are some alive," or this chapter belongs elsewhere. Okay. Now we also notice that the Gibeonites seem to accept. They're acting as if the whole story was true, that Saul did try to kill them all off. Okay. But again, we don't know. Excuse me. And David is willing to allow it to happen. There is in verse 6, it's an unusual Hebrew word. We don't know what it means. So your translation may, as you were reading, may have said something different. The NRSV says that we will impale them before Yahweh. Others say different things. The NIV says we will expose them. Yeah, expose to be killed and exposed before Yahweh. So we're not sure. There are other translations that mean something different. Let me turn my page here. It's uncertain. Yeah, impaling, like I said, dismemberment, crucifixion in the sun, hanging, or hurling down. So regardless of which way you translate it, it's a pretty brutal description, right? Either impaled, crucified in the sun, hurled down, which I would have the image of, like casting them off the side of a cliff, and dismemberment. So of them all, the crucifixion is probably the least gory, but also perhaps the harshest, since it would take the longest. And I think part of it, like the important part, is before the sun, before Yahweh, whichever way it's translated, out in the open, we will, which would indicate some sort of a ritualistic killing, okay, a ritualistic execution that is what would be needed and what would take place. And the king says, I will hand them over. Now, so the author seems to be, and also getting Shimei. Remember Shimei? He had complained about David. One of his insults, one of his curses, one of his things was that, oh, this is all coming down on you because of the blood of Saul's sons is on your hand. So that's another reason why they think this belongs earlier in the book. Yeah, in the book. This again seems to be the author doing an apologetic for David, saying he had really nothing to do with it. His hands were tied, there was blood guilt, the land was suffering. He didn't actually kill Saul's sons. It was the Gibeonites that did it, but they did it for the good of the people. Now that might be the case. That might be the case. But we could also see that, David could also be doing something very political, just making sure that there's no one that could try to take the throne away from me. I think part of the point here is what I'm saying is, don't think of this as having taken place just after what just took place. It probably, if it took place after chapter 20, it's probably a period of time. It's not connected to chapter 20 at all. I know normally I say that they're connected to each other, but this doesn't seem to have really any connection to chapter 20. All right, but picking up from there. But the king spared Mephibosheth, the son of Saul's son Jonathan, because of the oath of Yahweh that was between them, between David and Jonathan, son of Saul. The king took the two sons of Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, whom she bore to Saul, Armoni and Mephibosheth, and the 5 sons of Merab, daughter of Saul, whom she bore to Adriel, son of Barzillai the Maholathite. He gave them into the hands of the Gibeonites, and they impaled them on the mountain before Yahweh. The 7 of them perished together. They were put to death in the first days of harvest at the beginning of barley harvest. Pause. So a couple things. There are 2 different Mephibosheths. Okay, there are 2 Mephibosheths, because it says David protected Mephibosheth, but then it also lists Mephibosheth as one of the ones that was impaled. 2 different ones. But the one that David saved is Jonathan's son, so it would be Saul's grandson. But the Mephibosheth that was impaled or crucified, dismembered, whatever, was actually Saul's son through Rizpah, who was one of Saul's concubines, one of his secondary wives, however way you want to say it. Okay, so there are two different Mephibosheths. Don't be confused by that. Very easy to be confused by some of the others. Here's another thing to be confused about. That 5 sons of Merab, daughter of Saul. So in other words, these aren't sons of Saul; these are grandsons of Saul, but it still qualifies as sons for the blood guilt, apparently. Grandsons, but it says that she bore them to Adriel, son of Barzillai. Let us not think that this is the same Barzillai that helped David so much with Absalom when he fled from Absalom, gave him food and all that kind of stuff, and journeyed back with them. And David took one of his sons, one of Barzillai's sons, into his service. So highly unlikely that it's the same Barzillai. Why would David why would David do that if it took place afterwards? And if this took place much earlier in David's reign, why would Barzillai help him if he had 5 of his grandsons killed, right? So it's most likely a different Barzillai. 7. Why 7? Because presumably Saul had more than 7. He had numerous wives and some concubines and stuff like that. 7 is a very symbolic number for completion. It's a complete number. So they may have chosen 7 because although that's Hebrew, it's also just entirely Middle Eastern culture. 7 is like that complete number. So it's most likely that the Gibeonites selected 7 so that it's a completion, so that it's a complete number, and they killed them all. They were put to death in the first days of harvest at the beginning of the barley harvest. Picking up from there. Then Rizpah, the daughter of Aiai, took sackcloth and spread it on a rock for herself from the beginning of harvest until rain fell on them from the heavens. She did not allow the birds of the air to come on the bodies by day or the wild animals by night. Pause. So it sounds like the author is indicating that the 7 were executed and their bodies were just left there. They were treated with disrespect. We would say they weren't offered an honorable burial. They were just left there for the animals to have at. But Rizpah wouldn't allow that to happen. She chased them away. Oops, sorry, I thought I had my phone moved and I thought I had a message or something. She did not allow that to happen. When David was told what Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, the concubine of Saul, had done, David went and took the bones of Saul and the bones of his son Jonathan from the people of Jabesh Gilead, who had stolen them from the public square of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hung them up on the day the Philistines killed Saul on Gilboa. Pause. So we remember that story, just in case you don't, just a reminder. Saul and Jonathan were killed by the Philistines. The Philistines took their bodies, they paraded they cut off their heads, they paraded their heads through the cities, and their bones they burned. But the people of Jabesh Gilead, who had a special connection to Saul, went and stole the bodies from the Philistines, from where they had hung them up, presumably in a temple or something like that, in honor of their god. And they stole them and they took them back to Jabesh Gilead, where they buried them. Okay, because they wanted to honor Saul because of that connection, because of what he had done for them. So picking up from there, he brought up from there the bones of Saul and the bones of his son Jonathan, and they gathered the bones of those who had been impaled. They buried the bones of Saul and of his son Jonathan in the land of Benjamin in Zelah, in the tomb of his father Kish. They did all that the king commanded. After that, God heeded supplications for the land. Pause. Notice how the author is doing this. David David begins the story, but then it turns to the Gibeonites to do the action of the killing. Now it goes back to David as being the one who wants to treat the bones, treat the remains of these 7, as well as Saul and Jonathan, with great respect. With great respect. He's not going to just bury the ones that were just killed. He goes and retrieves the remains of Jonathan and Saul, which had already been buried, but he has them dug up and brought back so that they could be buried in the tomb with his father. So he wants to give everyone a very honorable and respectful burials, respectful funerals. Okay. After that, God heeded supplications for the land. Picking up from there, these last the last like 7 verses, whatever it is, 8 verses of this chapter 21, we see something happening. And there's different explanations for why, but we see David being less the focus in these verses. It seems to be telling the story of David's decline. So we don't know why. Could be somebody that didn't want, somebody inserted a couple stories to take away some of the shine, we might say, from David and throw shade on him instead. So picking up from there, the Philistines went to war again with Israel. We thought they were done, right? And again, we don't know exactly when the stories are taking place. They could be from different times and squished together into this. Okay? And David went down together with his servants. They fought against the Philistines, and David grew weary. Ishbi-Benob, one of the descendants of the giants, whose spear weighed 300 shekels of bronze and who was fitted out with new weapons, said he would kill David. But Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to his aid and attacked the Philistine and killed him. Then David's men swore to him, "You shall not go out with us to battle any longer, so that you do not quench the lamp of Israel." Pause. So David isn't as strong as he was. He's getting old, a little slow, and he wears out, he tires out. So this battle, he gets tired out and he almost gets killed. Abishai, remember him, right? His nephew comes to his aid, kills the giant, and everybody says, "Hey, you don't do this anymore. You stay home. You stay home." Continuing, after this, a battle took place with the Philistines at Gob. Then Sibbecai, the Hushathite, killed Saph, who was one of the descendants of the giants. Pause. I should have said this earlier. Who are the descendants of the giants? They could be referring to the Rephidim, who were way back considered to have been giants. Back, it's an old tale. Some of whom had, there's some claiming that they were the result of angels intermixing with humans, because presumably male angels found female angels to be, or female humans to be, so attractive that they had sex with them, and the Rephidim were the result. Okay. Could also be, which could be the giants that the Israelites saw when they first peeked into Canaan and said, "Oh man, those guys are too big. We can't win." All right. Picking up from there, then there was another battle with the Philistines at Gob, and Elhanan, son of Jehoram, Dave, the Bethlehemite, killed Goliath the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Pause. What? It wasn't David that killed Goliath? Well, that's what this says. If we go back, I shouldn't say that. I'd have to look that one back up myself. So this is one of two things. One, it's a different Goliath, it's a different giant, or it's an author of a section of a story just trying to take away David's greatest victory. and attribute it to somebody else. Or actually a third one, it's a different name. Some even say, oh, that's just David by a different name. It doesn't seem to make much sense. Picking up from there was again war at Gath, where there was a man of great size who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number. He too was descended from the giants. When he taunted Israel, Jonathan, son of David's brother Shimei, killed him. These 4 were descended from the giants in Gath. They fell by the hands of David and his servants. End of chapter. I am going to go back just so I can settle it in my own mind to the story of David with Goliath. Oh, sorry. I should have had this ready, but it didn't occur to me until just now when we were going through it. Yeah, he is mentioned as Goliath. Okay. I wanted to make sure that he was mentioned as Goliath in the other story, and he is. So, like I said, it's quite possibly the author of that section of the story, just trying to throw shade at David, take away some of his credit from like his greatest victory in particular. Well, friends, that's it for today. We will be back at this tomorrow, looking at the next chapter of our book of 2 Samuel, which will be chapter 22. We will look at chapter 22 of that tomorrow, and then we'll be back on Monday and Tuesday to finish up 2 Samuel. Then we're going to take at least a couple days break. I'll sit down and look over a Bible and see where we're going to go to next. And if anybody has any suggestions, you can always let me know, of course. But that's going to be it for today. I do pray that this has been beneficial to you, that you've learned something, relearned something, that God has spoken to you as you go about your days, not just today, but every day. Keep those eyes and ears, both physical and spiritual, open to everything our living, loving, active God is doing in your life and the lives of those around you. When you see it, when you hear it, say thank you, and then tell somebody about it. Until we meet again, my friends, be blessed.